Hello and welcome to Champaign County Agriculture Today. My name is Dennis Riggs, your host for the next half hour as we talk about a very important issue here in East Central Illinois, and that is alternative fuels and more specifically biodiesel. We all hear a lot of energy talk nowadays about the use of alternative fuels, about our dependence on foreign oil. Well, agriculture is doing something about it, both through ethanol fuels and now also with soy-based fuels. We're turning the tide and we're changing the dependence of foreign oil and moving that to something grown right here in East Central Illinois. Today we're going to learn more about that, so we're glad you're here. Today we have two excellent guests with us today. It's going to talk about the growing and the utilization of biofuels. First of all, on my immediate left here is Tom Costello. Tom is the Assistant Director of Marketing for the Mass Transit District. And we also have Mike Cunningham. Mike's a farmer over in the Vermilion County area and also on the Illinois Soybean Association Board. And Tom, we're going to start off with you. Give us a little background of your wide variety of interest here in the Champaign County area and how we might have called you to be on this program today.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Dennis. I think it's really one of the prime examples of bringing the town and country together, the kind of efforts that we've been able to put together with the folks from the soybean checkoff and all the soybean folks in terms of they've got a product and we're able to use it. And so, we've got people putting together something that can be used in the country or manufactured in the country and used in the city. And we've been working on this for a long time with the folks, and we're happy to be a part of it.
Tom, you're not originally from this area, so you kind of have a fresh perspective on that. So tell us about where you started out at.
Well, as my friend Dick Burwash says, I'm a sidewalk pounder from Chicago. Although I've been down here 33 years, and I indeed do know the difference between corn and soybeans, which he still is convinced I don't. But
you're working on it, right?
Well, let's put it this way. You've been down here long enough when you're worried about whether we're getting enough rain or not.
That way. Okay, well, we appreciate that. Glad to have you on the program today. Mike Cunningham from over in Vermilion County area, give us a little bit of background about your situation, what you do for a living, and then, of course, tell us about the organization you serve with.
Okay, Dennis, thank you. Again, my name is Mike Cunningham. I'm from Vermilion County, which is Bismarck, is actually where I live. Been there. I've been farming for 25 years, corn and soybeans. I've been on the Illinois Soybean Association for board director for 4 years in District 7, which encompasses Fort, Iroquois, and Vermilion County.
A lot of people may not understand how commodity organizations work. You are a farmer,
yes,
but then you serve on this board. Now you get paid big sums of money. I mean, you get to be jet-setted around the country. Tell us how a commodity organization and you as a farmer, how that works out.
No, there is no pay. It's a strictly volunteer service, and or how I got elected was actually you had the soybean farmers from Vermilion, Fort, and Iroquois County voted for me, and been on, like I say, board for 4 years, and what we basically do is try to utilize the checkoff money for better uses, for new developments, and to add to the bottom line of the soybeans.
Now, when you say check off money, people wonder where this funds that you use to do research and do promotion, is that tax dollars we're talking about?
No, it's the soybean checkoff fund is what it's from, and every soybean producer actually from Illinois contributes to that, and we get that fund back, and like I say, we're utilizing it for research, a lot of research and new uses.
So it's how farmers can promote their own product is what we're talking about.
That is correct, and hopefully grow to increase the bottom line on soybean prices.
Well, one of those areas that I know the Soybean Association has done a lot of work on is the area called soy diesel. Now, we kind of know what diesel fuel is. We've all seen it at the fuel pumps, at the different truck stops, and it's not really a fuel that maybe a lot of consumers utilize unless you do have a diesel-powered automobile. Mike, if you would, can you explain what soy diesel is?
Soy diesel is actually just a fuel alternative produced by soybean oil, and then it can be blended with petroleum oil to produce different grades.
Now, Mike, Tom, you have a chance to actually utilize this product. The MTD, of course, we all know, we've seen those buses rolling around in Champaign-Urbana. How do you utilize a soy diesel product, or do you utilize it?
Well, first of all, we probably have the largest fleet of diesel vehicles in the area. We have over 90 buses. And I'm happy to say that each and every one of them at this point is using a soy and petroleum blend in all of our vehicles.
Now, I know are there different blends? Is it all the same, or what are you using yours, Tom?
Yes, there is. I mean, there's a 2%, 3%, 5%. Early on, you've been as high as 20%. What we're finding, however, and this is one of the things that we're working with the soybean folks on, is that we're finding that vehicle manufacturers, the engine manufacturers, are reluctant to extend the warranty at this point, or honor the warranty if you go too deeply and you have too much of a soy diesel blend. And so right now we're burning about 5%. Last year we burned almost 38,000 gallons worth of soy diesel, and just the and that's what we do at a rate of 5%. So just the soy portion of what we've been. Trust me, we burn a lot more diesel fuel than that, but just the soy portion was about 38,000. And we think that we can really take that up to potentially a 20% blend once we get some of the bureaucratic wrangling over with in terms of engines.
Warranty work, actual performance, that's the type of things you're talking about, Tom?
And in some cases, people think you lose a little bit with the soy, but I think we can offset that, particularly, like, as everyone knows, petroleum prices are sky high. And if we can modify that with a soy diesel mix, then obviously everybody wins.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, let's turn to you for just a second. I know Tom uses a lot of diesel fuel in his operation there with the buses. You, as a farmer, I would assume that quite a bit of diesel fuel is used in your operation. Do you use soy diesel at your place?
Yes, I do, and I've been using B11 blend, and I've been using it for the last 2 years. Before that, I was at 2% just to start out with, and then we moved up to 11%, but I had no engine problems. I had no filter problems, and that was one of the things that biodiesel, soy biodiesel, is a very will clean and get all the junk out, basically. And you might, when you first start using it, might have to sit there and go through a change of filters.
I see.
But we haven't had any problem in the last, and like I say, this is going on the third year using B11.
Now, I'm kind of speculating here, but I would guess the manufacturers that build agricultural equipment, the John Deeres, the Case IH, the White New Holland, that type of thing, might be a little bit more proactive in their use of soy diesel. Tom says he's having some problems. They're maybe using in the 5% range. You're talking about 11%. Are the farm equipment manufacturers, Mike, maybe a little bit more proactive in that area? What are you seeing there?
A little slow to accept this, and I think International here in the last week or two, they've come out and said they will sit there and accept up to a B5 blend. But engine manufacturers do not warranty the fuel. They're warranting the components in the engine. So, I mean, biodiesel doesn't per se void the warranty, but there are some loopholes. Right now we're working with John Deere, and we're trying to get them to accept a higher blend.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that's some of the work that your organization does. Well, let's talk about the Illinois Soybean Association for just a moment. In addition to that type of work, what about the legislation, the politics of supporting an Illinois-based biofuel? What's your organization doing in those areas?
Well, on the legislation part, we help get a tax exempt for actually a tax credit for Illinois, I guess should say, is what they consider tax, but it's tax exempt. Blends up to B10, you get a 20% sales tax break in Illinois, and then blends over B10, which is B11 or above, it's actually 100% state sales tax exempt. So usually you'll find that biodiesel will be 3 or 4 cents cheaper than regular on-farm diesel.
Tom, I'm going to switch back to you with a fleet of 90 vehicles. You're experienced in what fleet operators come across. What have you heard as far as trucking companies? You see truck stops, you see all the semis out there on the road. Have you heard how those people are doing using soy diesel?
You know, I have, and I can tell you that from our experience, it's been a very positive experience, and we're really pleased the way that it's worked. You know, you and I had spoke before the show, joking a little bit about, you know, as long as a bus goes on the street and smells like French fries, I think some local fast food restaurants are going to make out on that deal a little bit like popcorn in the movie theater. But that has really, really worked out for us. We found that we've had absolutely no problem with our engines. I fully expect to have the Cummins folks in the near future say, okay, we can move along a little bit further and add a bit more diesel or a little bit more soy to our mix in our blends. One of the challenges that we had for a long time is that we didn't have any blenders. There was simply nowhere to get that. I mean, it was, we had, some of our local farmers were blending on site. They were doing it on their own place. But so now that we have blenders, and as we have more providers, the marketplace will be a bit more competitive, which will certainly be good for us, and in our case, good for taxpayers, so that we have some competition, but also availability. And as the availability comes out there, I think that you're going to find more and more use.
Do you try to stay with a specific percentage in your fuel supply? Have you experimented going back and forth, or are you pretty much locked on?
Well, we started at 3. We're going to stay at 5 until we get things straightened out with our engine manufacturers. I said I think we can go to 20. One of the other the things that we have to speak to quite candidly is, we have to take a look at the marketplace. Good news for the soybean farmer, maybe bad news for the people that have to purchase the end product, in terms of the grains. On the other hand, if we can get a level where we sit there where the soybean farmers are doing well, and that we're able to use that as a blend, and we can see obviously the finiteness of the other fuel, I think that we can find ourselves right where we want to be in terms of what we're using and how much we're using and what kind of blend.
Mm-hmm. Mike, I'll turn back to you then on that question. As Tom mentioned, if soybean prices and all of us soybeans are in great demand and the price goes up, what have you seen as an organization, or what have you heard in the news as far as the relationship between the price of a bushel of soybeans grown here in East Central Illinois and the price of a gallon of soy diesel? Much research on that?
Yes, but you got to remember that biodiesel can be made with other products too. Other animal fats is one, and any kind of seed oil, flax, palm. Of course, so if the price gets too high with soy diesel, they can switch over to cheaper oils and still make it and manufacture it.
Tom alluded to the fact that sometimes we've heard where they're taking used oil as far as frying oil, cooking oil, the old French fry idea that they're taking the old oil out of the French fry cooker down here at the fast food stand on the corner. And I know there's a high school in Mahomet that has a process where they're refining that and putting it into fuel. What have you heard about things like that as far as other sources of oil other than straight virgin soy oil?
Well, I think Stefan Company is actually going to try to do theirs with animal fats. Believe it or not, they're rendering fats and everything, and going to use that to make their soybean or biodiesel. Mm-hmm. But there's still lots of questions. I mean, of course, we don't want to see palm oil or other imports come in here and get the same tax breaks that soybean oil is getting. Soybean biodiesel, but right now, as it stands, we're still working on legislations for that.
Okay. Well, a good vantage point that you have to inform us is the work that's going on in Vermilion County. I understand that there's a soy diesel or a refinery or a plant going in over there. What's that mean to the economics of East Central Illinois?
Well, like I say, it's Bunge Corporation there in Danville just announced this past week that they're going to put up a 35 million gallon a year plant there in Danville, and what it means for Vermilion County is actually the stability of the jobs, but also on the soybean farmers. It's going to probably help our basis. It's going to sit there and create more of a demand for our soybeans in that area because there is lots of competition in Vermilion County with where the grain's going and everything, and that's just going to help us all the way around.
When we're discussing this, you used a word there that maybe our consumers aren't too familiar with, a basis. What do you mean by the basis for the price of a bushel of soybeans?
It's going to narrow the gap. Boy, that's a tough question. I can tell you what it is, but I can't. But what that is basically it's going to sit there and increase our prices that we receive for our soybeans.
There you go. That a lot of times we run across terms like that we use every day, but the basis, the difference between the Chicago Board of Trade price and what you receive as a farmer at the local elevator may narrow up because of increased demand. And as a farmer, I would guess increased demand is something that is good for farmers overall.
Oh yes, yes. definitely, because this more dollars in our pocket.
Well, Tom, we have a chance here you've got Mike right on your corner there that you can talk directly to a farmer or to a farm organization. What needs to be done as far as you as a good consumer of biofuels? What do we need to do to make your life easier?
Well, I think one of the things that we can really serve as something of partners in terms of moving our, as I said, moving our engine manufacturers to let us increase our percentage. You know, we've been working with the soybean checkoff folks. We started our first test in 1994, and we ran a couple of buses on soy diesel then, which at that point really was cutting edge. And so we've really been kind of working back and forth to see how we can make it worthwhile for us. And particularly, it's particularly meaningful when you take a look at it. I mean, we are in the heart of corn and soybean country, and while we have this urban area that happens to be here, the fact of the matter is that we're right where it's being manufactured. I mean, we're right at where we make it. So. We sure as heck want to be able to see if we can use it. So I think if we can move ahead and get up to about a 20% blend, I think that on our front, that's one of our goals.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go, Mike. There's a man that uses the resources. Is that good news that you have consumers of fuel that have been fossil fuel oriented in the past that are looking forward? What does that mean to you as a farmer?
Well, as a farmer, it's tremendous just because it's going to increase our profits. Mm-hmm. And like say, besides 20% there, I think Jeep has come out and they're going to start shipping their smaller diesels with 20% blend in the fuel tank already.
Yep, I've heard that also, that on some of their smaller SUVs that have diesel-powered vehicles, they're going to be putting that in. Well, what kind of promotion is the Soybean Association doing, maybe not just in the soy diesel area? Are there other areas that the soybean crop, which quite frankly accounts for about half of the crop acres here in East Central Illinois, what other things is the Soybean Association do to increase utilization of that product?
Oh, right now we're really active in aquaculture, which is, for lack of a better term, fish farming. But deep sea cages out in trying to sit there and utilize soybean meal to feed the fish. I think fish meal right now is one of the main ingredients that they use. It's like $650, $700 a ton, and we're trying to utilize soybean meal to start feeding the fish this.
Mm-hmm. We have talked in the past about when soybeans, of course, is thought of as a meal and an oil. I mean, you crush a soybean, that's the two products that you get, and we a lot of times think of those as food products. Does the utilization of soybeans for fuel take away from our food supply, Mike?
It can, but it will actually, the prices will sit there and set themselves. The market will determine where it's going to go. And if the price is too high for the fuel use, or vice versa, they're going to use the other alternatives. Mm-hmm. So it's going to wash itself out.
What about the availability of the fuel? Tom, of course, works in town, and it's probably a little bit easier to have suppliers that can deliver to his business here in the big city. What about out in the country? How do you go about finding sources for soy diesel to utilize in your own operation, especially those that maybe have the higher concentration of soybean oil?
Actually, I just called my fuel supplier, and most fuel suppliers have availability to get it. I mean, as far as I know, there's none that cannot get it, or some might not like to handle it. There is some special precautions you have to take to handling it, because at the pure product, it's a little more easy to gel and everything, but once blended, it's not a problem. But I just called my fuel manufacturer and supplier, and I just said, hey, I'd like to start delivering B11 to me, and he said, no problem.
Do you know if they blend it themselves, or is it a pre-blended product that they get?
They're blending it themselves.
Okay.
He's a big enough distributor that he is actually blending it himself.
Tom, let's switch to you as a consumer here in town. Have you had a chance to look at, I know you have your own pump out at the MTD that you fill the buses with.
About 30,000 gallons. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you drive a bus back and forth to work?
No.
Okay, all right. What about the consumers that may be watching our program today that have a diesel vehicle in in the garage out there in the driveway. What have you seen here locally as far as the possibility of buying soy diesel for their
Well,
consumer?
you know, I know this is a Farm Bureau show, but unfortunately, I really have to tell you, it works out real well.
Okay.
I mean, so I don't want people to think I'm just saying this to make Dennis feel good and just saying nice things. The fact of the matter is we're really pleased with the product. One of the things we find, our maintenance folks find, is that we have to understand that when we put that soy product in there, just as Mike was talking about cleaning out the engine, one of the things it does, it really increases the viscosity of the fuel. And I had to say that word because I've been practicing a lot.
Thank you.
But increases the viscosity and protects the components of the engine. So, in fact, this is what we find somewhat perplexing when we're dealing with engine manufacturers. And, all right, come on, gang, let's move along here. Let's put a little bit more in there because, in fact, what we're doing is lubricating the components much better than what straight petroleum diesel would do. So what we're finding in our experience has been really very positive, not only in terms of, okay, we're getting a competitive price, it's burning clean, but also it's helping our engine life as well. Now, we haven't been in it long enough to say, okay, we're getting additional engine life, but we certainly can say that the results from what it does ought to lead us in that direction.
We as consumers oftentimes look at the odometer on our vehicle to gauge how old the vehicle is. Does it have 50,000 miles, 100,000 miles? Buses, I would assume, are not that way. How do you gauge the lifespan?
Years.
It's years, or
Years.
hour. I didn't know, maybe hours.
We would typically, at a minimum, our vehicles, a new vehicle will go at least 12 years, and those are the bare minimum. I can tell you that. Let's see, where we at 15, 17. We're running some 16-year-old buses right now. We typically don't replace at 12. That's the nominal life, and we use that word nominal very loosely. So it's not unusual that, a little bit like aircraft, sometimes we have buses that can run 20 years. We may do one engine change in the course of that. So 500,000 miles is pretty much where we start looking at our engines to see if we've got a problem.
And that's the point I was wanting to bring out, is that you're putting your engines through, let's call it the acid test or the high-end usage test.
Well, take a look at the kinds of stress that we're putting on that engine. We're doing nothing but city driving. Okay, the starting and the stopping, going from 0 to 30, 0 to 30, 0 consistently. I mean, we're really putting a strain on the engine, and thus far the results have been very, very positive.
That's great. Well, Mike, that right there is good news as far as a end user. In your farming operation, your engines are used a little bit differently out there, or much the same as what Tom is talking about?
Well, we do have a semi on a farm. It's 19 years old and it's got almost 900,000 miles on it. And we've never done a major, besides routine maintenance, has not had any major engine component ever get worked on or anything. And then on the farm, on the tractors, of course, we're doing by hours usually, not by miles or anything. But I've got some tractors, 3,200 hours on it. I haven't had a bit of problem with it. And that was one of the things that we were concerned with, that people are concerned with, is that beginning was they thought maybe with newer or older engines that they would have a little more problem. But I haven't seen it on my own tractors.
Well, and aren't tractors used more or less pulling a heavy load, higher RPMs for long periods of time, where Tom's utilization is more the stop and go? Am I right on that? Would you say that most of your farm tractors are utilized at the high end of their power output?
Yes, I would. Like I say, we use pulling field equipment and everything, yes. And like I say, also the combine in the fall, and it's run a combine, you got to sit there and have it on full RPMs, and it's taking a load in or thrashing or combining, and it's utilized more. It's like say on the peak side of the engine.
Well, I think that's the good news that we can show here. We've got two types of users of diesel-powered vehicles, that whether it's stop and go and just lots and lots of hours, or high output, maybe even just seasonal usage of some farm equipment, it seems like the soy diesel is working out pretty well.
Dennis, let me throw something in here real quick. When we take a look at how we're trying to move the soy diesel program along, is that any different than any other kind of innovation that we bring, either to society or even to the farming community? someone brings something, there's a few people that jump in right away. They don't, right or wrong, I'm going to jump in right away. There's a few people that wait and see. There's a few people that you and I will be long gone before they think that soy diesel is a good idea. And I think that's really where we're at right now. We are incrementally moving along as we do with any kind of innovation to say, okay, this is something else that we can do. So I'm not surprised that it's taking a little while. I'm pleasantly surprised that I think that we're moving as rapidly as we are to bring this into use.
I believe you would be called an early adopter, is what sometimes that's referred to.
Now, we're a tester.
A tester, okay. Well, it sounds like the testers are coming out very well. Mike, are there any other stories around the state of other groups that are utilizing soy diesel successfully in their operations?
Well, there's 2 or 3 different fleets that are using biodiesel just exclusively on their fleets, and getting more and more trucking firms sitting there thinking about using biodiesel.
One high-profile person that we see in the news while it talks about it is Willie Nelson. I'm not sure how Willie Nelson got involved in the soy diesel area. Mike, do you have any insight into that?
No, I really don't on that one.
Have you heard about?
I think it started at Farm Aid when he was down here for that.
It could have been.
He saw, my goodness, there's a lot of soybeans down there. He probably didn't know there were that many soybeans in this world.
I'm sure
he
he
came down
did.
to Central Illinois.
Well, it's just been kind of an interesting angle. It seems like I see him quite often. Mike, give us a little bit more idea of the Soybean Association. What can they do to help promote this fuel? Are there any programs in the works for the future?
Right now, on the future is we're still growing. And right now you're seeing lots of legislation supporting biodiesel, and say there is actually some increase in state production. There was actually some grants given out. They have grants to give out to help set aside the cost of building a plant and everything in the state. And I think you're going to see that increase more just to sit there and get the production up.
And Tom, what about you? Are there some ways that there could be help to your business to utilize this product?
Well, I think where we're at right now is we still have the exchange of ideas from our National Trade Association, taking a look and saying, okay, are there ways that we can help other fleets? When you put us in perspective, take us versus a fleet in Chicago or New York or Los Angeles. There's no comparison in terms of usage. Yet we can use our experience and say, in our modestly sized fleet, here's what can happen. And if we can show them that ultimately they may be able to save a penny or two, burn more cleanly or a bit, or have better engine life, then that's the kind of information, just by exchanging that information, I think that can speak volumes as to how this product works.
That's good. You are getting some inquiries from other groups that have not used the fuel and they're relying upon your experience?
Well, we're kind of forcing ourselves on them, actually.
Mike, maybe you can give him some help on that. Well, I tell you, it sounds like a bright future for the use of another agricultural product to help reduce our dependence on foreign fuels. And I appreciate you gentlemen being with me today and providing us some great information on that. And we want to thank everybody for tuning in today. What we're trying to do on these programs is give you the inside look of how Champaign County agriculture can be a solution to problems, and as you, as a consumer of agricultural products, can be a more informed consumer, and that's why we thank you for listening. So we hope you'll tune in again next time when we have a chance to tell you what's going on here on Champaign County Agriculture Today. I'm your host, Dennis Riggs. Thanks for listening.